I recently went through a divorce with an evil, wayward wife who caused a lot of problems in my life. Not only did she affect my personal life, but she also damaged my relationships with friends. Because of this, I've distanced myself from others because I find it hard to trust anyone now. The whole situation started when I met a girl who had a feature I find attractive. I have a soft spot for girls with big booty. Unfortunately, this weakness almost led to the downfall of everything for me. I'm 28 years old and my ex-wife is 25. Our relationship moved really quickly. She had a strong desire for intimacy and was an excellent cook. My friends liked her a lot and were jealous of me. She was full of energy, and everyone seemed to be drawn to her. Just 4 months into our relationship, she became pregnant and gave birth to what I thought was our child. However, I later discovered that I was deceived, and the child wasn't mine. This revelation was a painful experience for me. Let me give some details about how we met. I first met her at a grocery store while we were both shopping in the same aisle. She had a big behind and a tiny waist, and I couldn't help but keep looking at her. She noticed me too, and I took that as an opportunity to approach her and say hi, even though I thought she was out of my league. It's funny how we often think someone is too good for us until we get to know them and realize they're just like us. We exchanged numbers, and our conversations flowed smoothly. It felt like a lucky and perfect moment, like we were meant to be together. The more I learned about her, the more I realized that she wasn't as out of my league as I had initially thought. She had graduated from college but was living with her parents because she couldn't find a job for 2 years. Additionally, she was dealing with student loan debt, which added to her challenges. When I asked her how she was managing her student loans, she told me she was doing online business, selling things on Amazon and eBay, and that her parents were also helping her out. Later, I discovered that she was actually dating multiple guys on the side and getting free stuff from them, using excuses like she was searching for the right guy. At that time, I had no clue about her double life. Even after learning that she was jobless despite graduating from college, I still liked her. I wasn't attracted to her for her degree or her income potential, but because she was good-looking and had a big behind, money wasn't the reason. We started a friends with benefits arrangement, but I wanted more from the relationship. She was very attractive, and I enjoyed the envy from my friends when she was with me. I was 28 and had a well-paying job as a supervisor for a big company, earning over 100 grand a year due to working a lot of overtime. Our relationship heated up quickly, and within 4 weeks of meeting, she practically moved in with me. It wasn't a formal decision. She was just always at my place, and one day I realized she hadn't been to her parents' house for weeks. I spent most of my time working, so I didn't really mind that she practically lived with me because I wasn't home much. One thing she was really good at was cooking, and she would prepare delicious meals for me when I returned from work. That made me more tolerant of her presence. Plus, she had a high drive, so I'd come home tired, and she'd provide good food and a reason for some affection. What more could a man ask for? However, after about 3 months, I started noticing a lot of red flags that bothered me. She was very argumentative, couldn't hold down a job, and was quite manipulative. Once she asked me to help pay her loan, and when I hesitated the next time, she made me feel guilty about it. She went as far as telling my friends about it, and they would bring it up to me. One of those friends happened to be my best friend from childhood, who also had a crush on her because we both had a type of girl we dreamt of, and I had found mine. Despite these issues, she was a good cook and enjoyed preparing meals for everyone. On weekends, I would invite friends over, and she would be the life of the party. We even had family cookouts, and my family members loved her. One time after a party, I noticed that my wife was getting too friendly with my friends, and I didn't like how she was flirting with everyone. When the party ended, I brought it up to her, and she exploded, accusing me of being jealous and trying to control her. I realized that whenever I didn't like something about her and voiced my concerns, she would overreact and make me feel like I was in the wrong. It was one of her many manipulation tactics. Around 4 months into the relationship, I started having doubts about it. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She was pregnant. Since it was going to be my first child, I was thrilled, And because of that, I started letting some of the things she did slide. One thing I found peculiarly appealing about her was that we'd argue in the morning, and by night she would be in tears, begging for my forgiveness. Then, strangely, we'd have the most intense intimacy. Sometimes, I felt like she purposely picked fights with me just so we could have passionate moments afterward. Yes, it might sound dysfunctional and toxic, and it was, but there was something about it that made the intimacy feel sweeter. She was my crazy girlfriend, my curvy girlfriend, my complicated girlfriend, and she was mine and no one else's. Such were my thoughts back then, but boy was I wrong. A few months into her pregnancy, she started making a big deal about having a baby without being married. She constantly pressured me and argued about it until I finally gave in. We ended up having a small wedding where we invited family and friends. Skipping ahead about 2 years, we now had a 15-month-old daughter whom I loved dearly. Our relationship was pretty toxic, but to outsiders, it seemed like we had a loving connection. She was unpredictable. One moment she'd be the happiest person, the next she'd be yelling at me like a spoiled child, and then an hour later we'd be having intense intimacy. Every argument we had seemed to involve her saying the most hurtful things possible to try to hurt me. During one of those arguments she dropped the bombshell that I might not be the father of our daughter. I was taken aback. In the heat of the argument about her spending money on my credit card, she said something so unexpected. In the aftermath, I couldn't help but wonder if she said it just to hurt my feelings. Later that night, she apologized before we went to bed, claiming she didn't mean what she said. This was a tactic she had used before, apologizing to make me feel sorry for her. However, this time it felt different. Despite her apology, I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling. The idea that I might not be the father left me emotionally hurt and confused. I began questioning the trust in our relationship, wondering if there was more to the situation than met the eye. When she suggested that I might not be the father, it hurt me deeply. The thought lingered in my mind, bothering me so much that I decided to get a paternity test the next day without her knowledge. A week later, the result shocked me. There was zero chance that the baby was mine. Discovering that I wasn't the biological father of my 15-month-old daughter, whom I loved and felt a strong connection to, was emotionally overwhelming. It was a mix of disbelief, heartbreak, and a profound sense of betrayal. The bond I thought we shared, the love I felt for her, was suddenly shadowed by the revelation that we weren't biologically related. Confronting her about the paternity results was a painful experience. She broke down crying, and I demanded to know who the real father was. Her confession shattered me. It was my best friend, the person I grew up with. The shock and betrayal cut deep, leaving me in a state of emotional turmoil. I called my friend on the phone, and he admitted to everything, begging for forgiveness. This friend was like a brother to me. We grew up together, and he knew all my secrets. I had confided in him about my issues with her. It was at that moment that I realized how foolish I had been. I had brought this girl into my house without really knowing her, paid all her college bills, and provided for her while she stayed in my house, betraying me with my best friend and struggling to keep a job. She confessed that my best friend was also giving her money, not just me, and that she started cheating because I wasn't giving her enough money. At the time, my friend wasn't dating anyone, and it seemed like we were unwittingly sharing the same girl. At this point, I was ready to end things with her and the baby. I told her to move to her parents' house, although legally I was still on the hook for child support if she pursued that route after a divorce. I wanted my friend to take responsibility, so I asked him to get a DNA test. About 2 weeks after I got a DNA test, my so-called best friend did the same. To both of our surprise, the baby wasn't his either. At this point, her parents found out about the situation, and she had a big fight with them and moved out of their house. When I was still at work, she used the keys she had and moved back into my house and refused to move out. When we discovered that both I and my former best friend were not the father, we also learned that she had been involved with 2 other friends of mine. I immediately filed for divorce, and she refused to make it amicable, accusing me of being abusive to her and her daughter. She insisted she had the right to stay and claimed I had no authority to ask her to leave. Knowing she had no job and no means to hire a lawyer, she sought help from a women's advocacy group and hired a lawyer. She was now alleging abuse and demanding spousal support and child support for a child that wasn't mine. I was terrified at the prospect of being stuck financially supporting a child that wasn't biologically mine, and also paying spousal support. I went online and read stories of men facing similar situations, and it horrified me to think I could be in the same position. In response, I hired an expensive lawyer, and he advised me to gather testimony from my friends to support my case. My former best friend, despite knowing our friendship was over, decided to testify for me. He had proof in the form of text messages from my soon-to-be ex-wife, where she said terrible things about me and begged for money. I reached out to 2 other friends she had been involved with. One refused to admit it due to being in a relationship at the time, but the other admitted to it and was willing to testify. In short, 2 of my ex-friends testified against her. During the court proceedings, I presented evidence showing that she was the abusive one in our relationship. I had proof of debts that I paid off during our time together, and the judge didn't believe her claims. With the help of my excellent and expensive lawyer, who exposed her during cross-examination, the court even administered another DNA test that confirmed I wasn't the father. In the end, I won, and she got nothing, no child support or alimony. Despite her parents not wanting her to stay, they had no choice but to let her back in to continue to live in their house for the sake of their granddaughter. Unfortunately for her, she forced my 2 other friends to undergo a DNA test, and it turned out that the friend who testified for me was the actual father of the baby. He had a serious girlfriend at the time, and she left him after the truth came out. After the divorce, I was devastated. I isolated myself from everyone, cutting off all my friends, even those not involved in the situation. I felt ashamed, like everyone was laughing at me. I realized I had been a sucker for love, and a sucker for women with big behind, and I paid a heavy